Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Listen, I'm excited for this next guest because when it comes to talking and knowing about relationships, being an expert, dating, anything relatable, she's also an author of a book that we'll get into. The one and only Rachel DeAlto is in the building. What's going on, fam?
How are you? So good to
Listen,
see you. It's so
uh,
good to see you because I only heard you before.
listen, we're talking about it briefly, right? Like you find everybody on Clubhouse. It's like, oh, this
Right?
person's dope. This person's cool. Let's connect. So it's awesome to kind of put the face to the voice. But for somebody right now that is listening right now to this, right? Whether they got the book or whether they're looking at you via the show notes, clicking those links, they want to know more about you. Take us back to like the young Rachel growing up. Like, where are you from?
I am from New Jersey and I'm still here. Oh gosh, young Rachel, man, can I go give her a hug? She had a bit of a rough one in the beginning. So yeah, but Jersey born and raised and can't leave. It's like there's a trap. There's a trap that's holding me down here.
It's crazy. That's crazy. So listen, like you're born and raised in Jersey, right? Like it's so interesting what we tend to do as we grow up as adults, right? We go into different career fields that we never thought that we'll be in. For you as a young girl, like were you like just observing people, how they were talking, what was making sense? Like take us back to like that phase.
You know what? It's funny. So I honestly wanted to be an actress when I was growing up. That was my thing. I loved theater. I loved acting. I remember I used to sing in the choir with Kirsten Dunst, and I was so
Oh wow.
jealous of her because she like went on to like kill it. And I was like, Mom, why can't I do that? And they're like, well, we're not moving to LA. And I was like, well, you're terrible. But yeah, I honestly it was very observant in those ways. And then, I saw definitely from a very young age, I'd always be the person that people would ask advice to. My parents, I would give them advice. I'd try to like mediate their challenges as like a 10-year-old kid. I was like, no, mom, this is what dad was really saying here.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So it sounds like if you're listening to this right now, like if you can really like just like take a step back and look at some of the things that you're doing, you never know, right? You might grow up and be like Rachel and make it a career, like make something out of it. I'm pretty sure there's like good advice that you were given. There's also probably been bad advice that you probably gave out. Like as as a kid, like what's the best advice you think your parents gave you?
You know what? Oh my God, this is going to sound so bad, but it's the first thing that came to mind. So I always run with that. But my dad taught me to be very cautious around people. He's like, don't trust anyone at first. And it sounds so kind of harsh, right? I was like, wait, is that really what I'm going to say out loud right now? But it was this really, I just remember him saying, like, I think the way he said it was like, trust no one. I was like, well, dad, that's a little harsh. But I think it taught me to be cautious with people because I'm so gullible. I'm absolutely rose-colored glasses with everybody, and I'm like, "No, no, no, everybody's great." And, I think having that in the back of my head has been very helpful to be cautious, especially as I got into media and, those different opportunities. I think it served me well. So thanks, dad. Good job.
Hey, listen, parents always know what's best, right? Like, it's just, if anything, he taught you is just stay on high alert. Stay on high alert
Yes.
until the job is done. Kobe Bryant has this saying, that he used to always say when he was going for championships, he'd be like, job's not finished, right? Job's
Yep.
not finished. Like, so stay, calm, observe your surroundings. So shout out to your dad. I think that was a great advice.
Solid.
As you're growing up, right, and you're going through, different, careers, you're going through, different courses, classes. Like, is there something in the education space that was drawing you near it, right? Because now you're an author. Like, was there some classes that was just, calling your name? Like, what was it?
So I'm gonna let you in on a secret. I'm the biggest nerd ever. So I just finished. I got a master's in psych after I already got my doctorate in law. After I did my undergrad, like I would stay in school forever. So like all learning just really made me excited. I love school. I never went. So that's actually pretty ironic. I actually got most likely not to show up in high school. 'Cause I
Wow.
think I missed, like, 45 days a year. Like, I just didn't go, and my mom was way too lenient. She'd be like, "Oh, yeah, you got a headache? Just stay home," and I'd get A's, so they just didn't care. But I
Wow.
loved learning. Like, I loved the process of learning. I love the idea of, like, getting an education. I just didn't actually wanna go to class, but I always loved education.
Oh, that's crazy, right? You say, I got a headache. Yo, you still got the cool parents. You got the dad who told you don't trust anybody. The mom who say, yo, just take the day off. Today's going to be all right. So you
Go watch
get,
some Prices Right.
hey, listen, I think that show still comes on at 11 a.m.
It's still
Eastern.
there. Yep,
But,
it is
but
still there. But Bob Barker, God, I
ah,
miss him. Don't forget to spay or neuter.
classic. And nothing was like watching Price is Right when the car came up. Like you just felt
Oh,
like you knew the right price to bet, and you was
right.
really wishing that they would do well. But I love that show. But like for you in particular, right? Like so you get this degree, you start getting media press, married at first sight, all these different things. Like what was it like getting coverage? Sometimes people get coverage, and they they fall back from the limelight. Like how did you take on all of that?
It was definitely an interesting kind of trajectory to get there because I had been doing TV stuff for about, I don't know, 5 years before Married at First Sight came around, and I had been doing, segments here and there. I do the Steve Harvey Show or Today's Show or GMA or things like that, and you're only on for 5 minutes. I think Steve Harvey was probably the longest because it was a talk show segment. So the exposure was really gentle, right? You didn't
Mm,
have like a lot of people weren't super invested in whoever you were talking about dating or relationships for 5 minutes. But when you hit something like a Married at First Sight, which is still, I mean, it's like gajillionth season. And those people that watch that show are really passionate.
mm.
And I don't know that I was really prepared to have that much exposure that quickly. And I say quickly, I'd been doing this for 5 years, but like that jump to that level was just next level. And it toughens you up a bit. I think it definitely gives you a little bit of a thicker skin. I hope that that does for most people. For me, I know it did. Where I was like, well, if you can survive that and you can survive the trolling of the internet, you can pretty much survive anything. So
Absolutely. You know what's interesting is that you said you're ready for the next level, right? Some of us wonder, okay, what does that next level look like? Like, was there a moment you're like, okay, all right, this is getting a little crazy?
yeah, I definitely I thought I was gonna cap out there. I was like, you know what, this is a lot. This is where I want to end this, at this level. And then I think this is kind of what happens with a lot of people and a lot of entrepreneurs where you reach a certain state, you reach a certain, level of your career, and then you're like, well, I'm still inspired to go next. I'm
Mm.
inspired to take those next steps. And so going past something like a Married at First Sight, now I'm pitching shows and creating things and looking to be an executive producer of things as well as being on air. So it's, and that's even more exposure and more responsibility and more stress. But I love it. I love that possibility that it's created in my life.
Oh man, that's so dope. And also too, guys, if you're listening to this, right? Like wherever you are, wherever stage you are in life, like you have to look at it as a learning process. What can you learn? What can you take away from that particular moment, that particular journey that you can later on go on and create something else of your own? So I think that's amazing and dope that you say, you know what, I had this experience, but you know what, now I think I might be able to be the executive producer. I might be able to be, do something a little different. I think this is so dope. Like for you, also, I think what's cool is that you have a book that a lot of people struggle with. And I want to break this down and I want to get your best tips in it, guys. If you haven't already purchased this book, the book is called Relatable: How to Connect with Anyone, Anywhere. What made you say, you know what, it's time for me to write this book?
That's a really good question. It was part serendipitous with the COVID pandemic because like so many of us, I think we're so busy that taking the time to step back and say, "Oh, I'm going to sit around and write for 6 months," wasn't really a possibility. So, I had been doing Relatable as a keynote for like 3, 4 months, and it was really making an impact on the audience. And so I kept thinking, this really does need to be a book. So I started to dabble into doing a book proposal and kind of working at it slowly. And then, still doing all of my other work. So it, it moved very, very slowly. And then March of 2020 hit. And all of a sudden it was like, well, either I could work on this book proposal or learn how to make sourdough bread. And I went with book proposal and I got that out there and was able to really utilize that time in a way that I'm very thankful for, because I think otherwise I would have like hurt my children or lost my mind. So it worked out well.
You seem so well balanced and thought out, like you're at home pre-planning exactly. All right, I see this happening. I see this not happening. Let me do this. But I want to know a little bit about like just from tips, like what are some of your best tips on how to just make a connection with anyone?
Yeah, and I break it down into 3 steps. There's really 3 major, building blocks for being relatable and making that connection with people, and it's connect, ooh, I speak for a living, communicate, and inspire. And, that first step I think is the most important. It's really showing up as you, and it's showing up and showing your whole story, and it's something I talked about this morning on Clubhouse, ironically. Was talking about how we don't oftentimes share the journey, and people think that you got to the top of the mountain by being plopped there by a helicopter half the time because they didn't show how hard that struggle was and didn't share those stories. And so if we're going to connect with people, we have to show up in a way that shows who we really are and stops putting up these facades and stops feeling like we have to be perfect, whether it's in our image, physical, or just the image that we portray as who we are as humans. And so, if we're really going to make connections, we have to get real with each other. And I just see so much of that is airbrushed, whether it's
Mm.
figuratively or quite literally.
That's true, right? Like that it could be the effects added on those photos on Instagram, all those things. I think what's so cool about that, if you're thinking about okay, how do you take what she just said, and digest it and implement it? It's like if you walk in your truth, you're either going to attract everybody that's for you. I said this all the time, or you're going to repel everybody that's against you. So I think that's so true to be authentic in who you are, and as you would say, relatable. You know, there's a post that you put up that I circled. I was like, okay, let me ask her about this. There was this trending thing with red flags, all the emojis being red flags. And I think everyone started to look at those particular posts and they say, okay, this only has to deal with relationships, but you put a spin on it, and you talked about how red flags could particularly be your friends. Explain that a little bit more for the audience, and what did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, red flags are ways that you can recognize how to protect yourself. I think oftentimes we look at things in terms of black or white of, this is bad, this is good, but red flags too is your ability to recognize what is right for you. And that's actually a skill. That's actually a talent, and that's something that you probably achieved through experience. So it's probably because you were in situations in the past that this didn't, that feels so clear that this is a red flag. And I look at red flags and your ability to see them as education, and meaning that you have achieved a level of education. Maybe you didn't want it, but you now know better. And so you can do better.
Man, that's true, and I love the fact that you broke that down because now you can do better, right? It's a little bit looking at it in a different aspect. I would be doing my audience a disservice if I didn't talk about a little bit about relationships, right? That's something that you're an expert in. When it comes to like just picking like the right partner, so many people that listen to this show right now, they are transitioning out of college. They've maybe started a new career, or perhaps they're an entrepreneur, and they're struggling with finding that relationship or getting that relationship with the success. What would be your advice to someone that is having those issues?
So I always the advice that I give every single time is you have to identify what and who you're looking for, because just like when you buy a car, all of a sudden you see all those cars on the road. Like I remember I had a black Jeep, I changed it to a white Jeep. When I had the black Jeep, I saw black Jeeps everywhere. As soon as it became a white Jeep, I saw white Jeeps everywhere. And I was like, wow, did everybody just get white Jeeps? No. In fact, is I actually was paying attention to what I was looking for because my brain was programmed to look for it. And so oftentimes when people are looking for a relationship or looking to date, they kind of just go out there and like, I want to meet somebody. Well, somebody is a lot. Somebody is a big pot. So find those non-negotiables. And I always say pick 4 non-negotiables. And non-negotiables are the qualities of the human that you are looking to connect with. It's not superficial stuff. I don't care how tall they are. I don't care how much money they make, what shape their eyes are. need to look at what are those things that you need in a relationship. Do you need them to be funny, kind, charismatic, ambitious, family oriented? What are those really kind of those pillars? And find those four, because four creates a good foundation, and then set your intention to look for them, because when you know what you're looking for, it stands out more clearly. So if you say, like, one of my non-negotiables is family oriented, and you meet somebody and they're like, yep, hate kids and never want to hang out with my family. And then you're like, got it. Not part of my non-negotiables next. Because I think sometimes we get frustrated because we don't know what we're looking for. And then when we aren't sure about that, attraction becomes the greater, the indicator. And attraction is great, but it doesn't create compatibility.
I like that, right? Attraction doesn't create compatibility, but also too, you really told the audience right then, like, hey, have some standards, have some things to go by. Listen, if they ain't got it, cut it out, switch it up. Listen, I've been enjoying this interview, but I want to ask you the question now that we've asked this question to everybody who has ever jumped on the show and been on this podcast, and that is whether you just graduated, perhaps you didn't even graduate at all, you didn't even get a degree, but you're asking yourself the question of the show. School's over, now what? What advice would Rachel DeAlto give?
I got to say, set that goal. Set that goal, because the same thing that we were just talking about when it comes to dating and finding relationships applies to the way that you show up in the world. So have that purpose. It's actually part of relatability, which is that third aspect I talked about, is inspires. What is your then what? And your then what is really that purpose, that why, that, okay, I graduated, then what? Okay, I got these followers, then what? Okay, I got the job, then what? But there has to be that inner spark, that inner light that allows you to really show up differently and really move towards whatever your definition of success is more intentionally. So I'd ask them, what's your then what? And find that, and then be guided by it.
I like that. That's laying out a whole guideline. Listen, Rachel, I appreciate you for being on the show. Absolutely crushing it today, as expected, giving nothing but value. Right now, people are more interested in you. They want to know, where can they find you? Where can you give us, all your social media handles and platforms?
I am Rachel DeAlto everywhere, from Instagram to TikTok. Those are my two top ones that I spend the most time in, but it's everywhere across the planet, the social media planet, and on my website. So.
Absolutely. Listen, I appreciate you for coming up to the show and absolutely crushing it. And for those that have been listening, always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it. Hey, what's up, fam? Thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. We'll see you next week here at School's Over Now What. And always remember, dream it, believe it, go out and get it.